All right, all you people over here, it's Cat Stanley Space Demon coming at you, and today we're going to take a look back at the time Peter Criss trolled Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. But first, we're going to get in the Wayback Machine and do a little history lesson. Now, you probably already know Peter Criss was the original drummer for the band Kiss. He hooked up with Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley back in 1973 after he placed an ad in the Rolling Stone magazine. They later hooked up with guitarist Ace Frehley and released their first album for Casablanca Records in February 1974. After 3 moderately successful albums, the band broke through with their double live set, Alive, which featured the hit Rock and Roll All Night. They followed that one up with Destroyer, and the big hit from Destroyer was a song called Beth, which was co-written by Peter Criss and arranged by producer Bob Ezrin, who brought in an orchestra to perform on the song. In fact, Peter was the only member of the band Kiss to perform on the song. It was basically just him singing along with an orchestra. They also brought in session guitarist Dick Wagner to play acoustic on the track, but it was basically just Peter singing alone. And the song Beth went on to be a big hit. It actually won a People's Choice Award, and the band continued to record a string of successful albums, culminating with the release of the double live Alive 2. And all the success of the band seemed to start to go to Peter's head. He started indulging in substances, particularly cocaine, and it started to take its toll on his drumming skills. And after the recording of their solo albums in 1978, when the band reconvened to record the album Dynasty, they wound up using session drummer Anton on most of the album. There was an incident where Peter, in a fit of rage, put his fist through a mirror and he was hurt, and that may have contributed to him not playing on the record. Or frankly, producer Vinnie Poncia just didn't think Peter had the chops to play in the studio. And there was an incident on the subsequent Dynasty tour in December of 1979 where Peter Criss felt that Paul Stanley publicly humiliated him on stage when Paul made a motion with his arm for Peter to slow down the tempo during one of the songs, and Peter responded by randomly speeding up and slowing down, and he basically just sabotaged the performance. And afterwards, the band were so incensed, they decided they wanted Peter out. But at the urging of manager Bill Aucoin, they decided to give Peter another chance. Bill Aucoin even hooked Peter Criss up with a jazz drummer named Jim Chapin to give him drumming lessons. And at that point, the band were getting ready to head back in the studio to record their Unmasked album, in which they would use session drummer Anton again for the whole record. Theoretically, in the meantime, giving Peter Criss a chance to take some drum lessons, try and sober up, and try to get himself together so he could drum on the subsequent Unmasked tour. But before the band decided to hit the road, they wanted to give Peter Criss one more chance. They set up a second chance audition / rehearsal. They were going to run him through some of the songs, see if he had the chops to go back out on the road with the band. So apparently Peter showed up at the rehearsal carrying an attaché case and a music stand along with some sheet music. Gene and Paul were both taken aback. Now, Gene Simmons recounted it in his memoir that Peter was delusional. He thought if he showed up with a music stand, everything would be all better. Gene even said to Peter, "Can you read and write music?" "Sure," Peter said. Paul Stanley recounted Peter saying something about needing all of their songs on sheet music now because he can read music after taking those drum lessons. Paul thought he was on candid camera. But the way both Gene and Paul talked about it in their memoirs was that Peter was deadly serious. He thought he could read music, he thought he could play really well, and he was just this delusional buffoon. But it turns out that's not the case at all. Peter was trolling him. The whole thing was a goof. I guess by that point, Peter had decided he was out of the band. He didn't want to be a part of it anymore, but he thought he'd have a little fun with the guys one last time at this rehearsal. He felt that after having worked with Chapin for 6 months, he'd picked up a few tricks and he wanted to ram it down their throats. So during the rehearsal, he would throw in some jazzy fills here and there and see if the band could keep up. Take that, you guys, was his attitude. All those times you put me and my music down, keep up with this, asshole, was the way he put it in his memoir. But Peter admitted that he did feel like they were sincere about giving him a second chance, but at that point, his head was still pretty swelled over the People's Choice Award from Beth. He was really locked in from all of the blow he was doing, and he really felt like that he was done with Kiss. But that's Peter's epic troll job to Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. And this might be another topic for another video, because Peter's follow-up solo album after he left the band, Out of Control, the record company ended up burying that record in the States. They gave it no kind of push, no kind of promotion, and the record tanked. And Peter suspects that Gene and Paul blackballed him, that Bill Aucoin even told him as much. But that's another topic for another day. Won't get into that one, but I hope you dig it. Peter trolled Gene and Paul. Pretty funny story. Paul and Gene thought he was dead serious, and I guess that's a good troll for you. That's the essence of a good troll, because if you control somebody and they don't even know it, that's a troll doing your job. See you next time. Rock and roll. I hope you dug it, man. Who's here?